This is the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast, hosted by David Charlton, and you're listening to this podcast to help you build your own mental toughness, or so that you can support other people or your clients better. Either way, you will learn more about developing this plastic personality trait that all but guarantees that you will perform better and lead a more prosperous life. Welcome to the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with your host, David Charlton. In today's episode, we delve into the business world with a well-respected leadership coach, the natural leadership coach, Paula Eddy Wilcox. We go on to discuss how you can regain your clarity, your purpose, and passion when you've lost your way. We discuss vulnerability and how being true to yourself can actually be frightening. We touch on links between mental toughness, vulnerability, and psychological safety too. It's a great listen for those who are interested in leadership and rolls over to life in general and sport too. Hi, Paula. It's lovely to see you again. And big welcome to the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast. Would you be able to share with the listeners a little bit about your background?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me again, David. Absolutely love doing this with you. Might have to make it a regular thing, eh? What you're doing in helping the listeners with their mental toughness is so fantastic. And to be able to be a small part of that is an honour. So I am a leadership coach by trade. But what I sort of specialise in, I guess, is helping people connect with their purpose. And to be able to do that, I look at the whole package, if you like, of the leader in terms of their foundations to make their leadership great. And a big part of that, which you and I have chatted about before, is resilience. And when I think about resilience, it's the mind, body, and soul. And within the soul piece is the purpose, because in your purpose, you're bringing joy, you're finding your strengths, and your passions and your values, and you're using all of those as the reason that you show up and get out of bed in the morning, if that makes sense.
It certainly does, yeah. Do you want to expand on how you, if you're, say, working on a one-to-one level with a leader, how you would go about trying to help somebody find their purpose?
Yeah, sure. It's the things that I mentioned there, actually, so if it's one-to-one, it's a longer process because we can go a lot deeper. Of course, we've got the time. We're usually having a program of between 6 and 12 sessions, depending on what the needs are of the client. So we've got more time to really dig into that. If you're in a team, we do it in teams. I have the program Accelerated Purpose Experience. So there's 2 sessions where we're looking at bringing stories about where you've had challenge and you've come out the other side. So it must be a story you've finished, if you like. Come out the other side, and what were the things that emerged for you out of that story? What strengths did you find to pull yourself out of whatever the challenge might have been? So that starts to contribute. Obviously, the things that bring you joy and the values that you hold dear. So some of my core values are trust, courage, and tenacity. So they feature very highly in my purpose for obvious reasons. So that's the kinds of things we're working on in 2 sessions in the Accelerated Purpose Experience if you're a team, or we can dig into much more deeply when you're one-to-one. That doesn't mean you don't get a real good experience in the team side of it either. So either way, we're catering for teams and one-to-ones, and you come out of it with your own purpose words, if you like. Or sometimes you've got a whole statement. So for me, I actually went on my own purpose journey back in 2019, where I met some fantastic people. We're still in touch today. We're called the Purpose Pals, and we just meet every so often just to check in on whether we are living true to our purpose, holding each other to account. And I have to say, last year was a really interesting experience for me because I was looking for a new contract, and I used my purpose to decide whether I was aligned values-wise, purpose and mission-wise with the organisations I was looking at working with. So that side of it obviously is to do with your leadership self at work and in your career, but it also plays a massive part in your own life, because we can't split the two. Life is messy, humans are messy, and the personal and the professional do interlink. So it's really interesting because it sort of permeates into my personal life as well. And, I feel very, very lucky, if that's the right word, privileged. I don't know. Perhaps it's been intentional. I think it probably has without me realizing. I surround myself with like-minded people who I enjoy and who also feel the same about certain things as I do. So what I'm trying to say here is I haven't had to move away from anybody, particularly because they didn't align with my values. Having said that, when I'm networking and things, I tend to realize quite quickly and avoid connecting with people that don't align with my values. And I would say that's a personal side of your purpose coming through there. So I hope that explains.
Yeah, it does. It's an interesting one because obviously this conversation, we're going to talk a lot about vulnerability. And in some ways, by being true to your purpose, you can actually make yourself feel vulnerable at times, I would imagine, because you have to stand up for yourself. You have to say no to certain clients and different situations in life.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, David. Having the guts, the determination, the courage to show up as your true self can be quite daunting as you start to do this on your own learning journey about yourself and developing yourself as a leader or an athlete, or leading as an athlete, whatever it might be. Tends to be the people that you're supporting, and it can feel really alien because we're often bound by what's expected. We've got all these people around us, our parents, our sort of wider family, aunts and uncles, whatever it is, from when we're really young, saying, what do you want to be when you grow up, Paula? All that pressure of whatever it is. And, in different cultures around the world, David, that I've worked with, that pressure is even into your adulthood. There's still wanting to know what you're going to do and have a hand in it. And if it's not a doctor, a lawyer, a scientist, or something really kind of high paid and high profile, then, sometimes it's seen as a failure, which is desperately sad. And I know that there's lots of people, including me, that are working to help change that for people and help them realize they've got their own choices. So it's part of making that initial choice to show up as your true, natural, authentic self, whatever words work for you, is quite tough, and takes a bit of a leap of faith because you are putting yourself out there, showing your true self, which makes you vulnerable.
Do you think it's easier as you get older to do that? You touched there on, I suppose, on youngsters or maybe even like people in their 20s, potentially a bit more impressionable on you at that sort of age, and you hang on to every word sometimes that your parents might say. So yeah, where are we going with that one? I suppose the role of the parent is crucial, and really watching your language is very important.
Yeah, no, you've got a great point. And what I would say about my own journey and some of the clients that I support, yes, as you get older, it's almost that you care less what others think. Now, I've been very lucky, just to give you an example of what that looks like, to kind of change my career a few times in my life. I had just about 30 years in corporate world, changing careers a couple of times, which was amazing and gave me some brilliant experience that I'm able to bring to my clients now in the coaching that I do. And now this sort of, I almost said final element. Who knows if this is my final sort of element of my career and the way that I show up? Because sometimes things happen and we have no idea that what's in store for us in future. But of course, trying to be intentional about your career and what you're doing and the choices that you make does help guide you to a certain extent. But yes, I care less now that I'm older to what people think, and I do what feels right and true for me. Again, going back to sort of different cultures, it takes a lot of hard work and practice and really giving yourself permission to show up and start doing the things that you choose, that you want to do. Let's just say your parents are pressuring you into the law degree that you said that you might want to do when you were 5, but now you're 22 and you're really not interested in law anymore, and they're still holding on to this thought that you want to go into law. It can be really hard at that age to kind of buck against that. Whereas when you're my age, and we're quite a few years on from that, I won't say how many, in a way, it doesn't matter because you've got lots of experience. You've realised that, let's just say you went into that law degree and you then went to practice law, and you very quickly realised that you were quite miserable in what you were doing. Ask yourself this question: what's more important, your own happiness or the happiness of others? And I will just say, only you can make yourself happy. I do truly believe that. Now, of course, making ourselves happy includes surrounding ourselves with the right sort of people that are our people. Of course, we love our parents dearly in the main, and they only want what's best for us. But in the end, we have to rise up and say, actually, what's best for me is this. So it's finding that courage, finding that bravery to be vulnerable, show them your true self, and go for what you really want and what really brings you joy. And again, that will start bringing you into connecting with that all-important purpose, why you get out of bed in the morning. And you'll find that once you take that leap of faith, you get that little bit braver and you make that stand, make that change for yourselves, things will start to fall into place for you in other areas that you didn't really realise were misaligned, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's got me thinking about some of the smaller elements to mental toughness and the 4 C's framework that I talk about often. And 2 areas, you've got interpersonal confidence and also your risk orientation. And I've worked in an organization where the culture is very much work hard, get your head down and put in all the extra hours. And, they're short staffed in general. And if you have low interpersonal confidence, you're not likely to speak up in that type of situation. You're probably just going to go with the flow. And then the risk orientation, again, if you're low in risk orientation, that's probably going to add to that. Whereas if you're higher in risk orientation and high in interpersonal confidence, you're probably going to be the opposite and be quite bolshy about it.
It's really interesting, David. And as you're talking about that, I'm thinking of a conversation I had recently with a fantastic women's assertiveness coach that I know. So I'm going to share a little tip for your listeners that may be facing that kind of situation where their interpersonal confidence is low and they don't feel they can say no. Now, the reason I'm sharing this is because setting our own boundaries and looking after those boundaries, because we are the keeper of our own boundaries, and generally they only get broken if we allow them to be broken, is really, really important to looking after our mental toughness. It's all part of that. So this little tip in terms of being able to say no came to my mind, which is a great example. So, David, I'd like you to stay behind tonight because we're really up against it. So-and-so's off sick, and I need you to do this piece of work so that we're ready for tomorrow morning's launch. Now, in your mind, David, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to see the Foo Fighters tonight. So I can't stay late, and I've got to get the kids to my mum before we go, because otherwise, the whole plan's going to go skew-whiff. But I'm really under pressure here. I need this job. I better say yes. What am I going to do?
Yeah, and internally you're feeling absolutely terrible, and you're really angry inside and everything. Yeah, your whole world's about to collapse.
Exactly that. And you are putting yourself under such pressure because this person is putting you under major pressure. So what might happen is that the usual David would go, yeah, okay, well, I can stay for a bit, but I've got this concert tonight, so I'll do a little bit, and then I'll have to go. And then what will happen is you'll come to saying, right, I've really got to go now, and they'll say, but we haven't finished. We've got to be ready for tomorrow morning, so you've got to stay. And you'll be like, okay, and then your whole evening will be ruined, and the wife will be angry, and all the rest of it, right? Mm. What you can do instead, because what we're thinking about here is that this is a regular occurrence. You're getting asked to stay late a lot. Okay, so this is the pretend scenario we're thinking about here. So what we're going to say to you to do is, when you're giving your answer, we're going to make sure that your tone of voice or your sentence goes down at the end, and we're assuming you're either having this face-to-face on camera or you're having it face-to-face for real. So we want your hands to come into play here. And instead of your hands being face up and open when you say, I'm really sorry, I'm going out tonight, you're going to flip your hands over so they're down, and you're going to say, I'm really sorry, I'm going out tonight. Now, it's a really tiny inflection in my voice and only a flip of the hands. However, the impact on the other person, scenario one, hands up, I'm really sorry I'm going out tonight, is an open invitation, and you're going up at the end of your voice, and you're inviting them to counter that and say, no, I need you to stay. The other way, hands down, really sorry, I'm going out tonight. Closed, completely closed. No chance of him coming back at you. And because you've always been David who says yes, he's going to come back and go, nah, David doesn't mean that. I'm going to ask him again. And that may happen 3 or 4 times in that same conversation. But all you have to do is rinse and repeat. Hands down, I'm really sorry, I'm going out tonight.
It's funny, as you've been saying that, I've been practicing. There's something about having the hands facing down. It makes you feel like you're in charge of the situation.
Really? Isn't it ridiculously small step that hopefully will really help your listeners to think about how they're showing up for themselves and how they're looking after their boundaries. And it is all about being assertive and not aggressive, because there was nothing aggressive about what I just said. It just was that I was in command of what I was saying, and I've got previous plans, and I'm not sorry. Actually, we shouldn't be apologising for this.
Exactly. You've had your concert planned for months and months, haven't you?
Yeah. I've been planning this for months and months. I'm out tonight. End of story.
Yeah, I like that story. In terms of vulnerability in leadership, do you just want to again, share with the listeners a little bit more about this.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this, David. I've got another little thing to share with you, and it is a little model, if you like, that might help your listeners. So when we think about leadership and career success, if you like, there's a neat little model called the pie of career success. So apologies if anyone's heard this before, but I will just share it because it is really interesting. So the pie of career success, a pie, exactly as you think about it. So think of that pie chart on the page. You've got three elements. You've got performance, image, and exposure. Now, this is definitely related to vulnerability, so I'm not going off at a tangent, I promise. So we've got performance is a portion of the pie, image is a portion of the pie, and exposure is a portion of the pie. Now, this is the simplest of models. So when we look at this in the mentoring workshops that I facilitate and run, we ask the people that are in the workshop, what percentage of performance do you think is related to your career success right now? A lot of them come back and say sort of 50, 60%. Okay, so what percentage of image is related to your career success right now? And they might say, I don't know, 20%. So we've already got 80%, which means that then they can only say, what percentage of exposure do you think is related to your career success? Well, we've got 20%, so there's your 100%. In reality, the pie is divided by 10% for performance, because we show up. Performance is a given, and most of us, in the main, have a great work ethic and want to do a good job and deliver quality work. So that's a given. Image is 30%. Image is all about your personal brand, how you want to be seen and seen by others, and how you see yourself. And then exposure is a whopping 60%. And this is what we're talking about, getting out there, being seen, and in a way, putting yourself out there and being vulnerable in your leadership. And there's loads of stuff you can do to help you get visible and put yourself out there to be vulnerable, especially when you're more on the introversion side of things, because that's to do with your preference rather than being, as people traditionally think, oh, extroverts, they're all outspoken, blah, blah, blah. Introverts, they don't say anything at all. It's not just about that at all. It's to do with the preferences of how you show up and the way that you think. So introverts think internally and need time to reflect on things. So if they're quiet in meetings, that's why, because they're doing all that thinking and reflecting on what's going on in the moment. Whereas the extroverts, they do their thinking out loud. So traditionally, they're the ones that take up the time in the meeting and talk out loud in the moment. That doesn't mean the introverts have got nothing to say. So, there are ways of getting support on that. One is to really be honest about how you are and how you like to show up, and always pushing yourself a little bit more outside of your comfort zone, because when you get through that fear zone into the growth and the learning zone, that's kind of where the magic happens and where you make your comfort zone that little bit bigger. So doing some of that for yourself, getting a mentor or a coach to help you do that and hold you to account is going to be really important for you, and helping you get more comfortable with the uncomfortable of getting visible and vulnerable. And then, of course, trying to get a sponsor if you're in some sort of organization where you're trying to navigate promotion or whatever it might be, extend your career in different ways, get into different projects. But also in the sporting environment, having people know about you and bring you forwards at the right time and talk about you to the right people, influential people, is all going to help in getting you out there and helping you get more comfortable with being vulnerable, because vulnerability really is all about showing up and saying, this is me, this is who I am, and what can I give to you from that? What would you like to take from that, in a way?
Yeah, I'm thinking here from a business and a sporting angle here. So again, an element of mental toughness is goal orientation, which is really what it's all about. It's all about setting goals, long-term, short-term goals. And in this respect, there's a lot of organizations literally will, I suppose, once a year turn around and say, all right, these are our goals for the year. And then it's on paper, maybe somewhere on a website, and that's it. But essentially, as a leader, being able to talk about the goals on a regular basis to people, and when things aren't going right, being open and honest about why things aren't going right is a skill. But often, I suppose, people can potentially fall into the trap. Well, if the organization's failing here, then it affects their own self-esteem, so they won't allow themselves to be vulnerable.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, David. I think, and as you were talking there, it's making me think about that sort of fixed versus growth mindset as well, which comes into it, being able to learn from failures and try again until you get it right is a hugely important part of your personal growth, and in terms of the organization that you're part of as well. If we're thinking about a business sense, it's so important to regularly visit the goals that we set for ourselves. In my business, I do that at least quarterly, but in terms of my goals, they're in my mind all the time. A big goal for me this year was to set up my own podcast. So I won't bore you with the details of that, but it's on the cards, and unless you take responsibility, you're accountable to yourself. And for me, I surround myself with people that help keep me to account to achieve these goals. You are setting yourself up for failure in that sense. So, taking that step, trying something, failing, learning from it, moving forwards and trying again and using those learnings is really going to help you adopt that growth mindset, achieve those goals that you really want, and help you to get there. If you're not doing that, I would ask yourself, what's the reason you're not doing that? Do those goals really mean something to you? And the outcome, is that really what you want to achieve? Because if it isn't, again, be vulnerable. Say so. Say, this just isn't floating my boat. Because, we've all been there. We've all been given a corporate goal or a business goal that we're like, great, that's really great. I'm really looking forward to achieving that. Yay. And, our heart's not in it. Yeah. It's just not in it. You need to find things that you're excited about, that you are personally invested in, because then you will put in every effort to make sure that you achieve those goals.
There's something there as well about, if you're in a managerial role, being a good coach and asking some damn good questions is important. Yeah. I remember a role I had in the travel industry prior to what I do now. Every month we used to get a review, and I used to absolutely dread them. It was a complete waste of my time, because the manager just told me, this is what's expected of you every single time. And there was no opportunity to open up and share this sort of vulnerability. So, it was very, for me, it was just, right, tick box, thank you. I've spent 10 minutes, 15 minutes with you. Let's just forget that. Let's get out. But they almost treated it that way, and they didn't look to try and, I suppose, dig below the surface and understand what motivated me and etc. So
it's so often the case, and it makes my heart sink when you hear that it's a tick box exercise. And what is the point? The employee engagement subject is starting. I say starting because I've yet to see it really start to get some decent traction, if you like. But it's starting to get onto the organisational agenda in a bigger way. People are beginning to realise that without engaged staff, you're going to lose them. And I saw a really funny post on LinkedIn yesterday, actually, and I wish I'd saved it. But it was something like, if you think I'm trying to steal your staff, I am, because I've got something really great over here. And if you haven't, they're going to come and join me. It was along those lines. And they're absolutely right. There's so many fantastic organisations out there that really have begun to understand what it is to look after their staff mentally, as well as, offer wise in terms of package and everything else. Because if you don't, you will start to lose people, because they'll vote with their feet and go where they're going to be much better looked after, and where they can be vulnerable, and where they can, show up as themselves and talk about things and challenge things without fear of the consequences. And I'm already thinking about psychological safety here, David, that I know that you and I both are fans of, in terms of thinking about that safe environment for people to operate in. And that's the gift that we can give them as leaders, to be able to show up as themselves without fear of the consequences.
Yeah, that word fear there, I've written 4 words down for, I suppose, for leaders to really to think about, is sarcasm. Try and avoid using sarcasm. I like the word, a made up word here, comparisonitis.
Oh yeah, great word.
Yeah, try not to go down that line of comparing people to motivate them. Then, as you say, fear, and then the whole blame game. They're sure ways to ensure that you haven't got a psychologically safe workplace, and people won't share their vulnerabilities.
And that sarcasm piece is a real issue, because what we're actually saying is people being passive aggressive, and that is a real horrible situation to be in when you're showing up to work 9 times out of 10 you're on time, but the 10th time you're late because of, I don't know, perhaps the childminder let you down and something else happened on the way to work, but normally you're an exemplary employee and show up on time, and then you just get this chipping away. Oh, 5 minutes late, are we? It's overslept, did we? You're like, for goodness sake, just address it and say, why are you late?
Yeah,
I'm really sorry. The childminder didn't turn up, but as you know, I'm normally on time, so it shouldn't happen again. But forgive me if it does, because it's one of those things I'm reliant on other people.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, lots of people will. That sort of thing's going to resonate with them.
Yes, absolutely. And it's horrid because it chips away at you over time. And you talked about that confidence piece earlier. It can have a major impact on your mental health over a longer period of time. But yeah, that whole creating. So yeah, let me ask your listeners a question. So what kind of environment are you creating for your team as you lead them? Because if it involves any of that passive aggressive stuff, that sarcastic behavior that we've talked about, people are worried about speaking up and challenging you because of of what might happen as a result, that's not comfortable or nice to be in or conducive to growth, development and success. And, so really think about, are you being an inclusive leader? You're not favouring others over someone else and making that someone else's life a misery. Everybody should be equal, be able to have their say and feel comfortable that you've got their back.
I think that's a nice way to finish the conversation, or, well, just about finish the conversation. To end it, what I'd love you to do is come up and summarise what we've done with 3 nice little takeaways for the listeners.
Oh, goodness me, we've gone all over the place today, haven't we? So I guess the vulnerability piece, of course, is the theme that we've been talking about today. So 1, in terms of boundaries, you're in charge of your own boundaries. You set them, and you are the one that either allows others to overstep them or you uphold them for yourselves. And you owe it to yourselves to uphold them. So that's the first one, the boundaries. I think the pie of career success, and realizing just how much goes into your exposure in terms of getting yourself out there, being vulnerable, allowing people to see the real you, the authentic you that you want to show up as a leader. And then I guess the final one is that environment that you create. Is it psychologically safe? Is your team really happy? Or are you the passive aggressive, unsupportive, not very nice leader? In fact, I would argue that you're not a leader if that's what you're doing.
Brilliant. I love those 3 takeaways. A big thank you. And I'm looking forward to tuning into your podcast, which will just about have gone live, I believe, by the time this episode comes out. Do you want to share that across to the listeners?
Oh, I'd love to, David. Yeah. Thank you. So my podcast is called Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. Of course, it's available on all the usual platforms. It goes live on Wednesday, the 29th of June at midday 2022. We'll say that in case you're listening to this next year. It'll already be live. So, yeah, I think it's really exciting. We've got all sorts of different guests sharing about their leadership story, their take on game and leadership, what that means to them. And of course, you'll hear about my story too, and those pivotal moments that make us the leaders we are today. And that connects with purpose for me, David. We've talked about purpose, and that's another takeaway from today. If you're not connected with your purpose, and you'd love some help to do that, please do reach out, and I can give you some help on that. But that it connects to your purpose, because you have to be able to show up as the right you as you find those pivotal moments. They help you understand why you get out of bed in the morning.
Brilliant. If someone wants to get in touch with you, as well as obviously going through your podcast, do you want to share some social media platforms or an email address where they could get in touch?
Yeah, of course. So got the website, which is onpointlead.com. We've also got my LinkedIn profile. So I'm Paula Eddy Wilcox, _Wilcox on there. And I am Paula Eddy Wilcox also on Facebook, I think. But you'll have a look and you'll see me there. It's got Game of Leadership all over it at the moment, so you'll know it's me.
Excellent. Okay, well, I'll put those into the show notes. Super. And big thank you for your insights and your time today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love talking to you, David. So until next time.
Well, that was another enjoyable episode to record with a lot of timely reminders for you all. Feel free to get in touch with me via social media or via email, info@sport-excellence.co.uk, and let me know what stood out for you in today's episode. Has anything prompted you to question your approach to leadership? You can also join the Sport Psychology Hub too, You can get in touch with me direct there. All the details are in the show notes. Enjoy your week ahead. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sports psychology resources. The Sport-Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.